probably start. Hello.
Morning.
It was so funny. This morning I was up early and I was thinking about being here and having to give a talk twice feels really odd. You know, it's like, I know some of the speakers, you know, do a lot of speaking and they give the same talks. And yet for me, it was like the energy of the first talk, you know, it just didn't feel the same. And so, I want to show you. I'm a writer, so I write all my talks. The morning I got here, I went first from the van to the bathroom. And I had my bag, that one there, sitting by the sink, and I put on lipstick or something, and I looked over and my coffee had spilled into my bag. Everything was soaked in coffee. And it was like, oh no.
I've had that happen.
So I went into the room and filled my bathtub with water and put all the things I could in there out over the heater, you know, on the side.
It looks like an ancient manuscript.
It does. Like that. That's a good way to
Wabi sabi.
And it's even worse now. So anyway, like I said, this morning, I was thinking of ways I wanted to change it a little bit for today. And so now I have little arrows and pencil markings all over the place. So if I falter once in a while, that might be why, just kind of checking my, you know, what does that mean? But I also want to say that just to say that we can stray today. That if people have questions, you know, that they want me to stop and address or anything like that, I'm very open to that because this is a nice, intimate little. I'm going to start with just the description of the talk, which is love is incapable of any exceptions, and the corresponding quote from A Course of Love, which is all are chosen. And I'm repeating that this morning because I think it's so wonderful that they work so beautifully together, and that there are so many things in A Course in Miracles that work so beautifully with A Course of Love. And that just really makes me feel the sense of us coming together, that there is so much going on in these conferences that bring these two works together. And I'm very thankful to Tony and his crew for that. So I've been thinking about my changes since the first time I came here, which was 3 years ago. And I wonder how many of you have been here more than once? Okay, not too many. Yes, a few, all right. And I know the first time I came was in New York. And A Course of Love was not widely known yet then at all. And so we were just in the bookstore. I was not a speaker. And I was very nervous because I didn't know what kind of reception A Course of Love was going to get that first time. And then I got off the elevator on the floor of the bookshelf for the first time, and I had the name tag on, and this woman squealed, "Mari!" hugged me. It was like, I had no idea that anybody from A Course in Miracles was already reading A Course of Love, and that was true. And then, even better than that, there was an elderly gentleman, probably in his 80s, and he was from Georgia. And he came up to me at my table when I was sitting there, and he said, "I have loved Course in Miracles for many, many years, but I did not like the ending. And now that I have A Course of Love, I found peace." Yeah. And that really, that sort of cemented it. It was like, okay, this isn't just a Course in Miracles party anymore. You know, this is for both of these courses. Then my next year was Vegas. That was pretty traumatic. 500 people in Vegas. You know, and here I can run back up to my room and get quiet. We were already talking before everyone entered about many of us being a little introverted. And in Vegas, I had to walk like 20 minutes through the casino to get back to my room. You know?
With all that noise, yeah, the machines.
And then I presented after dinner in this big, dark, cavernous room. And I had all these people afterwards tell me, because these alarmed right during my talk. And it was like, "You handled that so well." And I was like, that was like a miracle to me, because you all looked like you were falling asleep. Up there on this, it was like, I was on this podium, and there was this vast room, you know, people just kind of sitting towards the front, but they were all slumped. It was, you know, so also had a Course of Love gathering. So it was the first ever Course of Love gathering, so it was pretty dear to my heart. And my publisher was sitting back there, Glenn Hoberman, did most of the arranging for that. And there was a lovely singer named Kalyani. I don't know if you would know her yet, but she plays the guitar and she sings beautifully, and she wrote a song kind of inspired by A Course of Love. And I just couldn't stop crying. So my experiences with these conferences have been pretty intense. So this year I see Maria Felipe. Everybody knows Maria, and she's so vibrant. And when I saw her in 2005, she seemed like such a much younger woman, and she late in the evening one night, and she comes by with this crew and this guy with a big camera and says, "I want to interview you." I said, "Okay, just 10 minutes down the hall." And I'm like, oh my God, it's like 9 o'clock at night. I'm a morning person, but I go. I get in the room, Earl Purdy and David Hoffmeister are in there joking around with her, and she's got this bag with everybody to pick a topic out of this bag, and Earl had just had sex.
Oh boy!
And I'm like, Maria, no. I said, I don't want to do that. Can't we just talk? And she's like, everybody has to pull a topic. And it went really well, but so I was just reminded of that when I saw her, and she's married, and she's pregnant, and she's so happy. And but she told me, she says, "You're a much more confident speaker now. I can tell how you changed." And so these things like that, where you see changes in not only yourself but in other people. And one other very sweet thing that I was happy happened yesterday happened at dinner. And is it Tamara or Tamara? Tamara Scott. Anyway, Judith Scott's daughter, Tamara, came to our table, and she just visited real sweetly, but she said, "I just want you to know, I think you're authentic." Is that what she said? Is that the word she said?
Yes.
Okay. I was thinking to myself, was it that word? So anyway, I hope you are all having similar experiences of seeing your changes, seeing changes in others, seeing changes in the atmosphere of what's going on in our communities. My starting place when I know I'm going to be sharing with people, because I'm a writer, is to write. And always when I write, when I get my starting place, that's the crucial part, because then it seems to flow. But I might do 6-10 drafts before I ever get to the right starting place. And then when I do, I just want to stay immersed. I don't want to come out of my bubble. I don't want to let anything affect me, because I am there. I am in the groove of that particular theme that has grabbed me. It's got to kind of move me. And so that happened this year, and I was done about 2 weeks ago. And then something new moved me. I came out of my bubble, and it was like I found something else that moved me, and I thought, oh man, do I insert this in? And I only have this many minutes, can I take something out? But I decided to share a little piece of a conversation that I had with Jesus. And since we're a small group today, I want to ask you about this too. I've been kind of wanting for a long time to go back to my old writings, because do you all know the story of the Course of Love and how long it's been since it was first received? Okay, well, it was December 1st, 1998, when I started to receive A Course of Love. So this will be 20 years this December. And then I finished it in 3 years. So October of 2001, I was finished. And in November of 2001, the first book was published by New World Library. But then they never went on. There wasn't any great interest. They didn't go on to do the others. So it really hasn't been since Glenn's did the combined volume that we have now that it gained great popularity. But there were pockets, there were pockets of people who had the one book, or had I published it as 3 separate books myself in 2000. why did I, oh, okay, so, the conversations with Jesus. So, during the receiving of A Course of Love, for the first book, I didn't hear anything from Jesus except A Course of Love. So first chapter to last chapter, A Course of Love, that's all I heard. But after A Course of Love was done, I didn't know, I thought maybe that was all. A Course of Love was a self-contained, it seemed like it ended at the end. And, it was Christmas time, and things were busy. And but towards the end of the year, I was just feeling like I was missing Jesus so much and wondering, is this the end? Are we done? And so I wrote for the first time on New Year's Eve of that year, Dear Jesus, will you talk to me? You dictated this course through me. Will you talk to me? And that first time, he only said like a sentence or two. But then I began to kind of, I feel like they were sort of helpful conversations to help me through, help me through receiving, help me through the changes I was going through, help me through grief. And I said, here's the question I have for you. I don't know how many of you have read the different volumes of A Course of Love, and there's one now that has some of Helen's conversations with Jesus. And some people have said how helpful they were just to have that human side of it. And one of the reasons I'm going to share this one with you is because of that human side of it. I'm wondering if any of you have read those, or if that would be welcome to you, to have those.
I didn't know there was such a thing. So.
What edition is that, Lee, where those are contained?
Well, you said A Course
You
of
mean A
Love.
Course in
Oh,
Miracles?
I'm sorry, A Course in Miracles.
Oh, the CE.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
It's the CE edition.
CE?
A Course in Miracles. Okay.
Well, that's, of course, it wouldn't be contained together. But anyway,
All right.
I've just been curious about that because I've been very drawn to them. And we also had a really great thing happen this year where John Mundy opened his Miracles magazine to A Course of Love. Not just, he's had articles here and there about it, but we are present as a third of the magazine now. And this, caused him a little grief from some quarters, but he has told me since we've been here that he's had more favorable responses than negative ones, so we're really happy about that. But I'm doing a little series in the magazine about how A Course of Love came to be, just kind of, walking up to it. And so that really also got me started on going back to these old messages. So here's one of those. Dear brother, last night I was crying all over the place with Mary and just feeling how much I need to feel. Then in the morning I kind of realized that what I was feeling was love, and that I'd expected higher states, higher spiritual states to come as wisdom, not love. Is that the stupidest thing you ever heard, or what? I know I'm a feeling person, maybe even a person of great feeling, but where is my ability to express it? And then Jesus says, just be it. That is the way to express it. I know you don't do this, you don't do that. You're not off giving love all over the place. You're turning down places where you could do that. Okay, okay, sweet sister, it's okay. Love is everything. That is the feel of oneness. And yes, I know you are surprised by this. Do not chastise yourself for this surprise. You are not alone. Many have expected what you have expected, a sort of wisdom. Love is the only wisdom. Everything is love, including you. So when I say you moved into love, that was what he told me about receiving A Course of Love, that I moved into love. I say not that you have changed, nor that you have changed locations. The movement of which I speak is not of change, which is of time. It is not of the body, which is of space. It is that reverse movement into the formless movement that does not take place, does not happen to you, but simply is you in movement. Form into the formless. This is the only real movement. Form into the formless, and the formless into form. You heard come back, and you thought you were being called back to form. But this is a dance, like the in-breath and the out-breath of creation. And that's a wonderful piece of this theme, is the movement into form. It's a wonderful piece of the movement of A Course of Love. It is probably the biggest seeming difference between it and A Course in Miracles, is that we are to inform with love. We are to bring love into form. We are to embody the divine that we are. So that's the time of A Course of Love. I'm cutting some pieces so I can add others here. So this is a creative relationship. That's what this is, A Course of Love. And so what I just shared with you from Jesus and that little bit about moving in and out of form is part of that creative relationship. And I think that's part of Birth of the New. And what we're talking about also is sort of the needed reassurances, I think. Like he reassured me, it's okay, it's all love. There's such a great acceptance in A Course of Love too about who we are. You're okay, it's all love, you know. But right after A Course of Love was done, and for quite a while afterwards, I just felt like I was a mess. Because I didn't know how to go on without my thinking mind. And I felt very, very sensitive. And it was like I didn't know how to be in the world anymore. And that's probably the start of, well, being a writer, you're always a little introverted, but more of my extreme introversion or contemplation at that time. But at the same time, no matter how much you feel like you're a mess, if you've really moved into A Course of Love, if you've let Jesus open your heart, a door has been reached, a threshold crossed. What happens on the other side of that door is that what our minds would deny, our hearts cannot. What our minds would deny, our hearts cannot. A tiny glimmering of memory returns and won't leave us to the chaos we once seemed to prefer. It will keep calling us to acknowledge it and let it grow. It will tug at our hearts in the most gentle of ways. Its whisper will be heard within our thoughts. Its melody will play within our minds. Come back, it will say to us. Come home, it will sing. I'm going to pause and have a sip of water. Does anybody have a question so far?
I have a question. Had you been a student of A Course in Miracles before you started receiving this?
I never went to a group. I read about it. Oh, sorry. Strangely enough, the St. Paul Pioneer Press paper used to have a religion and ethics column. And it would have books in there sometimes, and it talked about the phenomena of A Course in Miracles. And I cut the article out and put it in the file drawer. And a couple of years later went and found the book. It just never kind of left my mind. And it was in about 95, I think. And once I got it, I never put it down. And I was always reading another book, you know, one after another. And I could not, it's like I couldn't be away from it. And I read it straight through. And I kept reading it straight through. I read it 7 times straight through. And it was just like I fell into the rhythm. It's like some people say it's so difficult, like completely understand why, but for some reason for me it was like poetry or something. And I couldn't be away from it. You know, I would bring it from room to room with me, you know? I mean, it was, so, and as A Course of Love was So I'll tell a little bit of the story since we're back here in 1990, in the 1990s. So I had a dream in July of 1997 that I could no longer sell my mind for money. My mind belonged to God. And I didn't know what that meant. And I had a wonderful relationship at work with, I call these women my spirit sisters. We had started our spiritual journey together. And I didn't want to leave my job. And so I put it off for as long as I just kept thinking I could ignore it. But this dream felt like a call. It felt like a prophetic dream. And what happened eventually was I became incapable of doing my job. It was like my mind would not stay on it. And I did everything I could to save my job. I thought, well, maybe I can do my work from home. Maybe I can do this. Maybe I can do that. And nothing worked. I could not focus on the curriculum of the University of Minnesota anymore. That's where I was working. So eventually I gave my notice and left, but I had no idea what my work for God was. And I'm a Catholic, and so I went to my priests. And I'd never gone and had a meeting individually with my priest. There were two at the parish at the time. And I didn't say I'd been asked to work for God. I just kind of put it out there that I had left my job. And one of them asked me to teach CCD religion.
We've all been there.
So I did that for a year. They also introduced me to a women's group that met, a Friday morning women's group, which was fabulous, and to centering prayer. So I have been a centering prayer practitioner since then. What I really secretly hoped being a writer was that I would be inspired to write something that would really be moving and helpful to people. I never thought of anything like it would be a channeled writing. But that was sort of my hope, that it would be writing, because I wanted to be a writer. And then, a month or so before I started getting the course, and I journaled all the time, and I was journaling through a lot of the angst of this situation, and right after I left my job, my husband lost his. All these things sort of happened together, and he was a heating and air guy, so he just started doing heating and air from home. He just started doing and it paid the bills, but barely, and so we weren't in a very good financial situation, and I was thinking, I'm going to have to go back to work. I don't know what this work for God is. It's driving me crazy. I can't even write anymore because I'm being driven so crazy, so I'm going to have to go back to work. And then I just felt like my heart was breaking, because I felt like I would be giving up on something that I wasn't supposed to give up on. And so my journal writing became really quite intense, and I began to hear, this is what the period I'm writing about in Miracles magazine, I began to hear from the teachers, and now I'm not even remembering if it's teachers of God or teachers of teachers, but I had opened A Course in Miracles for Guidance one day, and I went right to the back in the manual for teachers, and the words my eyes fell on were "help is here." And I think that's why I started it, why I started sort of evoking or being open to getting some help. And those were sort of my first clues that, don't give up, something's coming. It's still not anything definite, nothing definite, but I began to feel a little bit of hope that this was going to resolve itself. And then the final clue came from one of my work companions, my spirit sister friend, who's now my creative partner. Next year you'll be meeting her, Mary Love. She came to my house one morning, and it was in fact her birthday, November 25th, 1997. And we began our normal conversation, and then began to talk of our dreams and the kind of things, spiritual things that we would talk about. And she said, I had a dream of a new Course in Miracles. And that was when I knew. It was like it wasn't like crystal clear, but it was like I got one of those shocks. In fact, when I just said it, I felt it like up the back of my neck, and
Me too.
whew, yeah. And so it was less than a week later when it began. So from November 25th to December 1st, and December 1st it started. So it was a long answer to your question, but that's how it came to be. And then it proceeded. If you were at my introduction in the General Assembly, I told about I had one glitch where it was stopped for a while, and the glitch came. Jesus said I could not go on with my thinking mind. So that's really kind of the call of A Course of Love, is to get out of that thinking mind that wants to learn in a certain way, to want to have answers provided, to want to be instructed, to want, it's that to achieve something. It's almost a reverse. If you go from the beginning of the Course to A Course of Love to the end of the Course, it's almost like a reverse. Like you kind of start out still learning a little bit, because it's taking our minds from where we were left at the end of A Course in Miracles. It says the ego has been threatened. So we are more open then to love. We are more open to the heart's call. And we just keep moving deeper and deeper into that heart's call. And then the learning sort of reverses. So at the end, we're at think no more. We're at no more learning. You're going to put the book away. You're going to be it. You're going to move into these practices, these new practices of creation of the new and dialogue. And sharing who you are. It all starts with sharing who you are. That was always my favorite quote of the Course. When Marie Felipe interviewed me back in whatever year it was, she said, "What's your favorite quote?" And I was so glad I could say that. It's to, you can only be who you are. Now I gotta forget it. It goes something like this. You can only share who you are by being who you are. I think that's it. And it was my favorite for a large part because of the spiritual journey I began with my spirit sisters, because that's what we did every day. And we would just meet and we would share who we were right there at work. We saw each other 5 days a week. And my friend Mary Love, during that time, lost her daughter. She was pregnant and her baby was born and died at 5 weeks old. And that's when it really became so much more than it had started out to be, because it's like, I don't know if you've ever felt this, but I've felt it almost every time that I've been in grief. It opens me. Grief opens me to new experiences. And it began to open all of us, Mary and Julie and I, who were with her in that tenderness of that loss of a baby. And I had never known anybody in that way. I had never known anyone my whole life like I came to know Mary and Julie. And when I read that, when I received that in A Course of Love, you have to share who you are to be who you are. That's why it impacted me so much. I thought, oh my God, this is really it, because how can you, I've known people, you've known people, I was 40 years old, you've known people your whole life, and do you really know them? Do you really know who they are? Even my oldest friends, I never knew anybody on that level, and that was what I wanted, and I knew that was what I wanted. So, I'm just going to abandon this now and go where we go. Is that okay?
Sure.
Yes.
Okay. So part of this, I go back to some pieces of it, but what's gone out of my, Sharon. All right, so I found something out that really, I was just so startled by, and it was just recently about A Course in Miracles. I was preparing to do an interview for a conference on forgiveness, and it was mainly for A Course in Miracles people. And so I went back to A Course in Miracles which I don't do a lot anymore. And I was just browsing it. I'd only been at it for a half hour, and you know how little you get read in A Course in Miracles in a half hour, but you know, I was kind of paging through. And I see this quote that I would swear, even though I'd read it 7 times, that I'd never seen before. And it was, "The atonement is a lesson in sharing because you have forgotten how to do it." Does anybody remember that one
No.
specifically?
They just added it.
Yeah.
Wasn't there? What?
Okay, what was it again?
Okay.
Would you repeat that again? The
I will.
atonement.
"The atonement is a lesson in sharing because you have forgotten how to do it."
Okay.
And I thought, oh my God, sharing is the way back. Sharing is the way back to who we truly are, which is the whole theme of A Course of Love, and I think A Course in Miracles too. You haven't been being who you are. We're going to give you some guidance to take you back to who you are in truth. But sharing, that was so exciting to me. And then during that same review, I saw another one. I don't know if I can quote this exactly without my notes, but it said,